Hi there, folks. Adam here, coming to you from Naples, Florida, with the help of Gary, of course. Without whose help we wouldn't be able to do it. Matt as well. So just getting started, would appreciate, we're in a little bit of a challenging situation as we've just changed location. We're over at the Lag Shop headquarters here that's in Naples, but we haven't done the show from here before, but it's kind of a good spot for us to do it. So we're looking forward to that. Got the simulator, got all the stuff here, but first try here, we're having a few challenges with audio and sound. How about a 1 in the comment box if the sound is okay, a 2 if it's not. If we can get a few of those, it'd be a big help. Let us know if we're doing okay. Again, the audio is a little challenging here. I don't actually have a clip on mic, but we test ran it before the show here, and I think it's pretty good. Getting some 1s? Okay, so the audio seems pretty good if I can keep my voice up. How about video? How about visual? 2 if it's good, 3 if it's bad. How about that? A few 2s. I mean, if it's reasonably good, there I am. Let me hit a ball here, see what we can do. I'll tell you what I'm working on here in a bit as the show goes along. You can see it flying out there into the... That's definitely not Naples, that background, that's for sure. So the video is reasonable. Can we get a few 2s to let us know that? We're getting some 2s. Okay, great. Well, we'll let folks filter in as per usual. Got a nice little announcement that we're on the verge of here at Scratch Golf. Something I think you'll like. We'll tell you about that as the evening goes. And again, we're excited to have you with us here on a Wednesday evening. So if you would, as you come in, we've got to give people a few minutes. But if you would, if you put your name in there and maybe where you're joining us from, I'm always curious to see that. We get a lot of different places. Certainly in this time zone in the East and Central, we get a lot of that. Some Canadians, but occasionally some Europeans and Australians and whatnot. So we're very grateful for that. I hope we can be helpful for you tonight. So yeah, put your names in there. We'll keep filtering in. So what am I working on? Not that you care. And when I say working on, I mean in the few balls a week I allot myself to practice, but nonetheless, I'm still working on it. For me, if it's of any interest, my tendency is to get my upper body too much behind the ball. So I'm trying to be calm here and actually feel more movement late in the backswing there, this way, to give me some length and stack me up. I tend to get this way and get short. So the challenge for me is not to get jumpy and go that way. So that's what I'm working on. Glad to hear about what you're working on. It's fun to work on stuff. You know, certainly we're blessed down at Mediterra where we film the videos, my home facility that they're kind enough to host us at, to employ me at. Great learning facility. You've seen it on the videos. Beautiful, beautiful 2 golf courses. We have a wonderful practice facility there, big short game area. And some people, they just don't seem to take an interest. But that's okay. I don't mean in me and golf lessons with me. I mean just being out there, experiencing the outdoors and enjoying the process of trying to fiddle around with this great game. Honestly, when I was young, played a lot of football, soccer when I was young, because I grew up over in Britain, and I loved it. I played on the school team, really, really loved it. But when I got into golf at about the age of 11, what I really liked about golf, I liked the nature. I just liked how you could get out and fiddle with things and work on stuff. You didn't need a team or people around you or a meeting. You just get out and experiment, trial and error, and try to get better. I just found that interesting. So anyway, some people may not. I imagine most of you do to some extent, or you wouldn't be joining us. So probably it's a point now. We're welcoming people in. Would love it. We've got a pretty good sense of the sound, I hope. We've had a few microphone problems here, but I think it's good enough. We test ran it before the show. Would love to hear where you're from, what your name is, and yeah, begin to put some questions up if you would, and I'm going to have them sent to, Gary's going to be kind enough to send them to my phone. And I'll
make sure when you hit that green light is solid, or you don't get anything.
Okay.
And just have them start piling in and welcoming people in, and we'll get started in a few minutes.
We'll get started in a minute or two, but please start putting some questions in there. We'd love to have those. Again, name, where you're from would be great. We appreciate you being part of Scratch Golf Academy. Gary and I started this thing, 5.5 years ago or so, about that. And very thankful that people have responded so positively to it. Thankful it's helping people, I hope. For the most part, we get positive comments. If you didn't like it, you wouldn't sign up, I suppose. But we've built this website and having a great time with it. Glad you're part of it. Really appreciate your support your ongoing interest. Releasing more YouTube videos than normal this summer. I hope you're enjoying those. Got another one coming out Saturday. That's the plan. It's on, I think, getting a little more of an inside-out swing path. So we'll see if you find that helpful. Again, a little announcement about Scratch Golf Academy. Little upgrade I hope you're going to like. It's been in the works for a while. Talk about that as the show goes. So again, questions, put them in there. I'll be receiving those momentarily. Welcome if you've just come in. Love to know name, where you're from. It's interesting, the different places. Usually get a few from overseas, sometimes more than a few, so we'd love to hear that. And just pump those questions in. I'll do the best I can. Okay, got one coming.
It's hard to get to you. I gotta go to two computers.
Okay, so this is our first run at this new facility. This is the Lagshot headquarters. We usually do it up at the Club at Mediterranean. It's a better way, though. It's indoors, completely enclosed. Plus, they're upgrading the learning center, so that wouldn't work. But just trying to work out the bugs. Okay, we got David from Australia trying to get some forward movement in the hips in the downswing. Tried the towel move. Okay, well, David, you're probably working on the right thing. It's a good thing to have. Forward movement probably is what you're referring to is towards the target. We want some of that. Yes, we would like this lead hip to move forward enough where the hip joint, which isn't there, it's about there, is about over the ankle joint. That's kind of what you're looking for. So I would rehearse that in the mirror and get the feeling for that. One of the best ways to do that are two keys for that, I think. Number one, feel pressure into the ground. You may find it interesting, this isn't just for David, but for whoever. I've done quite a bit of work. I say work, I've been on force plates and around it and taught people on them and seen data from top players, college players, etc., etc. You could get, I'm talking very athletic, Division I college, PGA Tour, sort of Korn Ferry, 160-pound player momentarily might put 250 pounds of pressure into the ground, which you can do. You step on a weighing scale and do that, you'll see the needle move. So downward pressure into this front foot, especially towards the ball of the shoe before pushing back into the heel, that would really help you feel that. But that's the reference I would get, is about hip over ankle. And if you do that, you're going to be in great shape. Make sure those arms don't fire down too quickly. If they're rushing down, it's harder to move. You should feel pretty uninhibited and unencumbered as you do that. Okay, got some more questions coming in. How about, that was David from Australia, by the way. Wow, David, pretty interesting. Do you have a recommendation on a golf simulator? David Kyle. Well, that's a curious question.
Foresight.
Foresight, right here, right in the Lagshot. It's a great piece of equipment. The Foresight gives you all sorts of measurements, golf courses you can play, games you can play. Let's try a shot. Okay.
I can put you on Pebble Beach, par 3.
Pebble Beach, St. Andrews.
A little closer to you. You gotta be a lot closer.
Yeah.
Closer to you, closer to you. More. There you go. Anyway, perfect.
Okay, here we go. See the ball tracking out there?
Hold it.
That was my 8-iron. I got a total of 157 yards with a little bounce out, so that's not bad for me. I count on my 8-iron. And a good shot to be about 150. So Foresight's great. Now I'll tell you one other thing. Hey, these things aren't cheap. What are these things in retail at? 30 grand. So you got, unless you're planning to buy a car, 30 grand. But we do have a relationship with Swing Caddy. And if you've seen those, they're about the size of this phone. It sits on a little tiny stand right there, lightweight. They've been vetted and tested against the best launch runners in the world. They're very accurate. They don't measure everything this measures, but if you want carry distance, apex height, club head speed, ball speed, some of these figures that can really tell you if you're gaining distance, losing distance, help you chart your yardages, it's great. And with the link we can provide, we can get you a discount. Hopefully, if you're watching the show, we'll get a discount at some point underneath there, a discount link. But honestly, $300-400. And if you think about it, if you bought a new club, a new driver for $450, great. But if you had one of those things where you can gap yourself, yardage yourself, test what you're working on, see how your yardages are, see if it's working, Imagine over the course of a year or two how much value you might get out of that. So we have a relationship with them, and we'll try to get great. It's called Swing Cat. Okay, David, that was a long answer. Sorry. Phil Snow, 50-yard pitch shot on bent grass that's wet from recent rain. Best approach without digging or hitting fat. That is a tough question, Phil. That is not easy. So bent grass is pretty tight grass we get up here in the north in the United States, and when it gets wet, it's a little slippery and slick, and it's pretty easy for that club to dig in and catch a little heavy. I think what you're really looking for, what you don't want to do too much is just beat down on it and play it back in your stance. You might hit it solidly, but you dig a big divot, you hit it that much fat, just chunks it. So I would be trying, especially 50 yards, to feel a little bit extra length at the bottom of your swing. In other words, the flat spot, close to flat, is longer. That way, if you graze the ground behind the ball, you'll still be okay because you're not digging in. And to do that, it really is feel. But once you get a little nearer the ground, you've got to keep the club moving, keep your body extending and moving that way. And honestly, hey, we can do a lot of things by feel. You've got to have a little feel in this game, so don't do anything radically different, but get a long, level spot. I think your margin for error will be better. You'll probably find, though, you might start catching the ball a fraction lower on the club face, which should cost you maybe a little bit of distance. So you might factor a slightly harder swing. Okay, Rums Dizzle. Let's have a look. Having trouble keeping my left arm straight. Don't want to be tense, but want to keep it straight. Okay, a couple of comments on that. Number one, it's so critical that you have a grip that gives you mobility, because as you watch me here, I've left the handle of the club out here a little bit. As you watch me, as I hinge, it should actually push the handle farther from my body. And as that happens, it's easier to extend this. It's no good getting this straight if later you have to bend your wrists and sort of sag that way. So do it in conjunction with wrist break. And once you've got that thing set, which should be roughly in this area, keep pushing with that right hand, the butt of it against that left thumb. Even if you're a little bit bent, if you're a bit tight in the lats, if you keep decent space between right hand and shoulder, there's a mirror right there, I'm checking, make sure I do it right. If you keep decent space out there, you'll be okay. So get it set, keep that trail hand pushing against the glove thumb. That would be my thinking on it. Okay, what do we got here?
A lot of questions.
Wow. Thanks, Phil.
I had to put them
From this
different ones.
Brian, what is a +2 handicap considered professional? Well, +2 handicap means your average round numbers is 2 under par. So you would have to add 2 shots to your score if you're playing in the club championship if it was stroke play. 2 handicap takes 2 shots off. That is really good, and you're in the top percentage of a fraction of 1%. But I'm afraid that's not going to get you on the PGA Tour if that's what you're asking. The average handicaps, because they don't have handicaps, but they can look at the course ratings of what they're playing, which are very high on those golf courses at 72, 300, 400 yards. Rough, quick greens, and they look at their scoring average versus what the adjusted slope is. These guys that are making money out there are 5 and 6 plus, 4 and 5 and 6. Tiger Woods, I think in his best year was like a +8 or 9, just ridiculous. So you're on the right track though, it's great golf. Now, you can be a professional by declaring yourself a professional. That's actually all it takes. That doesn't mean you're a PGA pro or you have the PGA certificate, but the intent to win money and declaring yourself with the intention of winning money as a pro makes you a pro. Okay, Michael Munin. Hi, Adam. In the Middle Atlantic, we have been I hear that. The hurricane pushed up and kind of blew some. I was teaching a guy today from Philadelphia, and he said how wet it had been. And, okay, been very wet, and the fairways are soft. I'm noticing I'm hitting more fat balls. Any suggestions? Yeah, we were kind of talking about this a little while ago with the 50-yard pitch off bent grass that's wet. Hey, when that grass is wet, it isn't easy, especially up north, the grass kind of sits down. Down here in Florida, we have Bermuda grass, or sometimes paspalum. It's thick, bristly kind of Brillo pad grass, and the rainy season's the growing season, the hot season, it's still spongy, but when it's sitting down on that wet grass, it's just a harder shot. You've got to be a little more precise. We were dealing with more of a pitch shot earlier in the show here. But I think I wouldn't try to hammer down. You don't want a deep divot, you want a decent level spot, but I would definitely get the ball back in the stance and touch. For a shorter club, set your weight left and just keep moving. So a nice level spot, but keep moving, get the bottom of the swing in front of it. And club up a bit. You're probably not going to get, here's one other little comment that relates to these things, but it's a general truth. Could just be a tight lie on a dry day. When the ball's in a very bare lie, you are going to hit it lower on the face. You can see that. You just are, then perfect. Perfect is up a little higher. When you hit the ball lower on the face, in this case, wet lies, ball sitting down in the short grass, the club gets pushed back slightly, robs you of distance, not tons, but some. And as it pushes back, it gives extra spin. So you get a spinning shot with a little less compression. So when you feel you're going to hit the ball a hair low on the club, not thin, but a hair low, you've got to have a little more club or a little more speed. So club up, get plenty of club, swing medium smooth, get the ball back and chase the bottom of a fairly level impact past the ball if you can. Okay, Michael. Brian, what is your handicap? Adam, what is your handicap? That is a trade secret, Brian, and I'm not going to... Honestly, I do love this game. I grew up playing this game. I played mini tour golf before they had all these Corn Ferries and that. It was Central Florida, Southern California. I played in Central Florida. Battled it. Wasn't really that great. Had some rounds in the mid-60s and made some checks and made a few things. Had a few disasters to go along with it. So, in other words, I've played plenty of subpar golf in tournament play. These days, honestly, I must play, not because of intention, but I must play 4 times a year sometimes. It's not because I don't want to. I'm busy, there's always stuff to do, and I've got time. The golf course is busy, hadn't seen the wife, etc., etc. So as little as I play in practice, I play the tees pretty far up, middle tees. But I would say if I'm playing okay and get out for 9 holes, and I'm playing the tees 6,400 yards or something, I'm about par, 2 over, 1 under, something like that. So don't actually have an official handicap. Too much pride. Just kidding. Avid golfer, could you talk some tonight about lead-arm adduction? How much or how little? Geez, I know that term, and I'm going to tell you, I blanked on it here. Let me look something up here, because I want to answer your question. It's like a golfing machine term. Okay. Listen, I'm trying to look that term up. I know that name. There's supination, all these different things. If you could type back in exactly what you're asking me, I'm sorry. I'll have comments once I understand what the word is. I've heard the word, I've just blanked on it right now. I don't have it in my head. You're talking rotation, connection, turn down of the wrist, cupping of the wrist. If you could maybe type that back in, would be a big help. I am sorry, I'm not better prepared for that. Let me find my text again. So that was Avid Golfer. Eli's golfing vlogs probably. How can I keep my driver ball flight lower? Well, here's what I would do. First thing, do you hit it pretty solidly? Do you hit it reasonably consistent at whatever height you have, even if you think it's too much height? If it's inconsistent, that's another matter. Secondly, I would really get on a proper launch monitor. I really would. One of these expensive ones like this tells you a lot more thing about angle of attack, spin rate, than even the swing caddy would. You don't have to buy one. You can go to a club fitter or someone that knows what they're doing. There's nothing more important in club fitting to me than a driver, other than putter fitting is important, but a driver fitting. You are trying to optimize your yardage, and this science is vetted out. They know. They can tell from your angle of attack how efficient your delivery to the ball is, so they could critique that for you, could help you. Could be have a bad angle of attack, could be the difference. Could be, though, it's okay, but for your swing speed, you need a different shaft, a heavier one, a stiffer one, or something like that. Likely one of those two to get the ball flight down. But you need someone that knows what they're talking about in club fitting, has the machine, TrackMan, Flight Scope, Foresight, and get them to look at it. There's just some anecdotal thought from me probably isn't going to help, honestly. I would really, and it's not expensive to go have a driver fitting. At our facility, Mediterra, we have a guy that does full-time club fitting. He's great. You can do a single club fitting. Usually it's a driver. So I'm sure they have that at these other places. Okay. Okay. Phil, wow. I'm just trying to find my way back to where I was here. Okay, got it. Toto, if ball below feet, what might be causing shanks? Wow. Ball below feet this way, side hill lie. Most likely balance going towards the golf ball. If you move out a little bit on the downswing, you have a chance to catch it in the old neck. Not recommended. What I wouldn't do, honestly, is get way in the heels when you set up on this because your balance will go forward. Try to get the best balance lines you can get, hips over ankles, toes about tricep, and just compress. So that is, those references would stay the same. You'd be more compressed, a little wider stance gets you lower, and swing within yourself where you can stay in balance. You see a pretty significant side hill line, you'll see a top player just kind of stay at the shot and have a little medium-sized finish. Because, hey, I mean, listen, solid contact is king, and it's not easy off these lies. There's Brian's question about my handicap, sorry. I'd like to tell you it's +6, Brian. You wouldn't believe me. Okay. Charles Day has a okay, Phil, I move my head all over the place. How to stop drills. One of the best drills, obviously, certainly pivot drills. Go to the pivot video in the channel. Get a feel for what you're trying to do. In other words, rehearse it without the club and the ball bogging you. Next thing, get your shadow in front of you when you're out practicing. Not necessarily with a ball. It may not be even at an angle where you could hit it without killing someone. Just get it in front of you for a practice swing. Right in front of you, though, not sort of in front of you. And as you swing, at least backswing and the start of the downswing, you will get real-time feedback as to whether the top of your shadow is moving, whether your head's moving. You want to move freely, but move within a stationary spot. Feedback's the key. So pivot drills, shadow drills. Charles Day, that's an old friend of mine. Charles went to the same high school my brothers did in London. I went to the preparatory school there. Saw Charles in New York a couple of weeks ago. Hi Adam, what do you think is too much turn in the backswing? What does that look like, feel like? Well, I tend to be a little guilty of that, or used to be, till I stiffened up. I think for the average player, we call 90 degrees back to target. Unless you're pretty darn flexible, I'm kind of medium flexible. I think for most clubs, right about there. And you want, hey, some resistance in the legs, enough that you feel some sort of stretch and torque, but not too much that you feel like you can't move. But unless you're hitting a 3-wood or a driver or maybe a low lofted hybrid, I wouldn't want to see a lot more than 90 degrees and see too much of the back. That would be my thinking. As a reference, of course, if you're going to do that, you have to use a mirror, which I know you do, Charles, and a video camera, which I know you do that as well. Good to hear from you, Charles. Say hi to Chris. Stephen Correcchia. How to stop hitting the ball chunky? Well, there's two kinds of fat. This is important to diagnose. Number one, am I bottoming out early, kind of slap, drop kicking, skidding off the ground, or am I digging great big whacking deep divots? Probably at times you instinctively fight that and straighten up and not take any divot, maybe top it, but that's the key. If it's too chunky, which is the word you use, meaning the divot's severe, it's almost a certainty that your club is coming too much down from in front of you, not enough from the side of you here. This is always more rushing. This is always more chopping. So if I was in deep rough, I want this. If I'm hitting a tee shot, I want more of that. So if it's chunking and deep divots, flatter swing plane coming in more from the side of the body, which I know is, that's not a piece of cake, but that's what I would recommend. If it's kind of drop kick skimming off the ground, hey, then you probably need more weight shift and more lag to get the bottom of the swing past the ball. Okay, Chris P, Boston, Mass, Manchester, UK, wow. Was a Man United fan in my youth. My brothers are Arsenal fans. Okay, to improve ball striking, I've been advised that concentrating on keeping your chest over the ball is more beneficial than keeping your head over the ball. Yeah, I do like that. I do like that, actually. But one little word of possible caution, you may not need it. We have a tendency to believe, to think, because I've done this too, but I've learned a little bit more about it with 3D motion capture, that the ball is always the reference to staying down. It isn't. When they use 3D motion capture and analyze what your body's doing, down is always in relation to where you're pointed, not where the ball's sitting. So as you try to stay more down, I do like that, more than head down. Stay down, but stay down in movement. So if the light was shining off my chest, that light would be moving and going around me versus up and in front of me like that. So yeah, great idea, prefer it to head down, but keep moving. Mark, FX12, only golf YouTube guru. Well, that's kind of you, Mark. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. It makes up for some of the nasty, negative comments we get on YouTube. I feel good about that. Thanks. Honestly, mostly positive comments. People are nice by and large. But thanks, Mark. I'm glad you find it helpful. Howard Bly. Hi, Adam. Howard Bly from Shippensburg. I know that name, Pennsylvania. I know that I've heard of Shippensburg. Anyway, can't tell you where it is. What can stop someone from hitting fat shots with all their irons? Well, we've touched on this a little bit with previous questions. In fact, 2 questions ago, I think someone was hitting it chunky. Is it steep into the ground or is it drop kicky? If it's just kind of bottoming out behind it and not digging wacky great divots, the 2 variables primarily are how much, assuming the head's fairly still, how much weight do you shift? If your weight's more towards the target, your bottom out point likely will be more in front of the ball. And when do you release the club? How much lag do you have? Because when the club gets straight, that's the bottom of your swing, pretty much. So you've got to have that happen after the ball. Honestly, most people, you know, that was against a 10-story building, and there was no wind and the ground was dry, drop off there, I would be perfectly safe standing there. Wouldn't do it though. Be far too frightened. I just couldn't get that close to it, nor could you probably. People have that with the golf ball. It's like this impregnable wall of death right here, and they live their life on the back side of it. Don't be afraid when you're practicing. Glide by it. Release the club over here. Make some mistakes there. Free up a little bit. I think it'll really help you. That would be a word of advice for a lot of people too. Okay, Tom Meal, I'd like to know more about the body's tilt with the different clubs. Probably talking about address, Tom. So the general consensus is that for most clubs, certainly shorter clubs, we're about straight up, although when one hand is lower than the other, if you stand neutrally and hit, so your heel of your right-hander hits these top knuckles of your left hand, that's about the relationship. With no attempt to tilt, you will see a slight tilt. That's enough. So your head would be pretty centered between your ankles. But when you get long clubs, if the lie's pretty good, you might want just a touch more than that. So the bottom of my spine here goes forward ever so slightly, tilting me there. Driver, of course, is different. The ball's up on a tee. Now we really can hit up. Wider stance, and that's when we have a little bit more of this. One word of caution though, so don't force too much of it in short shots. One word of caution for all of you, when you try to tilt though, maybe you don't need to tilt. I tilt too much. Don't tilt with the shoulders and get your back in a curve. Tighten everything up. You won't pivot well. Your back should look relaxed. Your shirt should hang normally on you. It should just be a very, very slight, straight spine bump that way. You shouldn't feel either lat is tighter or shorter. If you do that, I'm telling you, you will not pivot very freely. Okie dokie, moving along. That was Tom. Stephen Carecchia. How to stop chunking the ball with irons. Really dealt a little bit with that in the recent questions here on several fronts about chopping, getting your deep divots getting shallower. If you're just bottoming out behind it, having the freedom to move your weight and lag the club a little bit, or let's say release it a little bit later. One little drill, so I hope that's been helpful, but if you've been bottoming out behind it, not steep chop, get a ball in front of you, whoever, this addresses those questions, and put that down. Make some little practice swings, and overdo it. Hit the ground over here, not by chopping over there. Now, I wouldn't want to move that much, but feel something different, open something up. Don't just always try to do it perfectly. That would be build some feel. That would be a recommendation. Cash quarry. How much should your right wrist be bent at the top of the backswing? Oh, Jabari Halley from North Carolina. Well, thanks. Well, I think, here's what I would say. I mean, if you just hinge the club in front of you, it's really no more bent than the left wrist. But when we fold the right arm a bit, which it has to for the right hand, pretty much has to, you're going to feel a little bit more angle in the back of the wrist. I would really try this. Let's assume a good grip, which is a significant assumption. But I would really, if you cocked your wrist up and down this way, and then just let your right arm fold and feel very much the same thing there, just like I'm doing, that would be about enough. I would not try to get some fakey angle in there and overdo it. I've done enough experimenting with my swing when I was younger, still do a little bit, for the whole audience. And I can tell you, I've been down a lot of rabbit holes trying to force stuff into my body. Not saying you are. It never worked. It's got to feel pretty natural, pretty reasonable for your body, pretty simple, or you're probably on the wrong track. So moderation, I would say there. Mike Weaver, Ohio. There isn't actually a question there for Mike, but we'll get back to Mike maybe. Sierra and Keedy, should we try to get right shoulder down lower on the downswing? Well, maybe. If you're an over-the-topper and you get your head in front of the ball and you jam down it, that would be a good idea. What I wouldn't recommend is just getting up here and trying to drop your shoulder. You're not going to hit the ball super well like that. I like to see someone get the key is get the club, get the hands, arms, and club down. That's the key. Now, the body's still leading. People that get a high right shoulder usually pull too hard, the club comes out, then it comes down, and that gives them that high right shoulder. So don't drop the shoulder so much, get the hands down. And certainly, hey, a little bump of weight too is going to add a tiny bit of side bend, which we like, and that would effectively make the shoulder look lower. But I would say the right shoulder would be more of an effect than a cause. And I go about it those ways. I hope that's helpful. Phil Snow. Topping new Sims driver, usually 2-3 times over 18 holes. Suggestions? Well, yeah, I'll give it a try. And it's hard to say without seeing you swing. Generally speaking, if someone's a reasonably good player, they've played, 17 handicap golf or whatever, 20, 14 handicap, they've played for a while. Hey, it's not like they can't find the ball with the club. They hit a lot of good shots. But what usually happens when people top, we all have, some people more than others through practice, through talent or whatever, we all have the ability to make, and the innate ability to make compensations that are really genius. When you look at slow motion on camera, I do this all day teaching people golf. They do some of the most remarkable things to salvage shots. They don't even know they do it. I mean, if I was playing softball and you pitch one in tight, I'd find some way to get out of the way of it, most likely if you didn't pitch it hard with no coaching. I'd find a way out. Bent arms, pull back. The mind is amazing. So what I see usually is someone creates too much of a downward hit. Could be plane, could be they stay this way and get like that. Angles too severe, so their subconscious has built in a bit of a remedy or a bailout there at the bottom. Once you get those things going, your timing's got to be just right. Sometimes you're going to do it too much and top it. So if you, as a guess, if you could get the club down more, nearer the ground, more behind you there, then I think what you could feel, the club's nearer the ground, you can keep it along the ground, or you can keep it lower longer and avoid the top shots. Let me just segue, it pops into my head. This is a certain drill. The full swing course, which is kind of the staple course back at scratchgolfacademy.com, we have, I know I've said this in a few private sort of tutorials online, got a new one coming. Worked hard, we got a whole new course to replace the old one. It's similar in scope and structure, but I found that some of the videos I've done on, say, YouTube and whatnot, or with questions or comments or recommendations or, requests, and looked at the way things have gone with the more live appetite of YouTube, I figured out some things that have resonated with people, and we've redone the whole course There's about 4 or 5 more videos, a couple taken out, 4 or 5 added in, and there's a nice piece in the one on the transition about this plane and some drills as to how to get on a plane. It certainly apply to the driver. But I think you guys are going to like this new course. We hope to have it up on the website by tomorrow night, right? So you probably have to sign out and sign back in for it to refresh. It's downloading at a place where it can be used on the app. Once that's completed, it's already at the site, but not live yet. It'll be up. So I hope you're going to check your Scratch Golf thing over the next few days, starting maybe tomorrow night. Sign out,
Send an email.
sign back in. We'll send an email as well. Kind of excited. Hope you'll feel the same. Kenneth Cantrell in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. This actually isn't a question there. It's okay, we'll keep going. You can shoot me questions. Timothy B, when I hit my irons well, I can't hit my 3-wood or drive. I work on my driver and then can't hit my irons. Can you show the swing path of a driver and the wrists and the wrists at the top of the backs? Yeah, hey, listen, this is not that uncommon, unfortunately, Timothy. Kind of hitting the irons well, next day driver's good, irons no good. Then you get it all together and you miss every putt. I mean, it's pretty difficult to put it all together. Typically, though, the best players have, I would say, we call this shallow, coming from the inside. Shallow as in that's steep. Shallow with a nice low spot. What they do with the iron is their weight's more forward, the handle's more forward, the ball's more in the middle, and with the driver, the ball's more forward, stance is wider, and there's a little more bend back. So it's the same golf swing, but customized a bit from this angle with ball position and shaft relationship, spine shaft relationship. Golfers, what happens to a lot of golfers, they struggle with their irons and they get a bit steep and start to hit those wedges well, can't hit the driver. So then they get a little bit flatter and start hitting up more, driving it well, can't hit the irons well. So that could be the rut you're in there. Okay, Brian, Rocco, are you in New York?
Sorry, I just grabbed the whole comment.
That's okay. We're grabbing them off the computer. They have to go through 2 things to get to my phone. We'll keep trying to update. Ivan Jacobs. Hey guys, Ivan here from Auckland, New Zealand. Wow. Always wanted to go to New Zealand. I have never talked to anyone. I've talked to a lot of people that have been there. Never talked to anyone that didn't say they loved it, including Andrew Rice, who's a great friend of mine, and we do some stuff together at Golf Fanatics. He's been there a lot. Loves it. Okay, I play off a 1 handicap and a good ball striker, but I have the tendency to thrust my hips in the downswing. Any drills I can use to minimize this? Wow, that's not uncommon for someone that's a really low handicap, because it's hard to hit the ball a long way and hit from the inside if you don't have some hip thrust. But a lot of times, really good players, but not world-class players, err towards too much hip slide, me too, and sometimes towards pushing their hips towards the ball. So I think I'd first off check your balance throughout the swing, your balance at address, because if your body senses it's off balance, it starts firing. Secondly, usually in these cases of these very low handicap players slash 0 plus plus handicap players, there's 4 segments they measure in motion sequence: pelvic, hips, that's abs, glutes, abs, upper trunk, chest, upper back, shoulder blades, arms, club. Those are the 4 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4. What usually happens with these golfers, the hips drive, then the arms get going, and this doesn't do enough, this segment here. Just the opposite usually with 25 handicappers that slice the ball. The hips don't do enough, the arms don't do enough, and the trunk does too much. So I would recommend for you try to stabilize against the ground and work on getting this working. Getting some weight shift, getting that thing to rotate, and more get the feeling your legs and hips are providing a base for that, not independently running off so much. And make sure you feel like it's this segment that's pulling the arms. Got some slow motions of Tiger Woods I've done over the years on videos. He does that so well, that sequence, and how those arms and wrists respond to the trunk. Probably doesn't shock you, he does it really well. That's what I would suggest. Nice to hear from you, Ivan. Thanks for joining. Stephen Garecchia, yeah, got one from you here a few minutes ago. How to transfer weight to your lead foot, please? Good swing foot, please. I've said this quite a bit to whoever's been listening. My experience with a lot of video, a lot of time with people, force plates, you name it, 3D motion capture, most people that struggle to get their weight to shift, it could be that clubs are out of position, but generally, they get the club down too aggressively and quickly. I mean, think about it. Do you know anybody that if their arms are hanging there couldn't shift their weight to the left? I don't know anybody that couldn't do that. So it shouldn't be any more difficult than that, shouldn't. So if you let, we're just talking about this with the chap from New Zealand there, if you let your arms respond more and just kind of hang in place, it's as easy to shift your weight as it would be if you didn't have a club. That's what you're looking for. My guess is too much thrust. I'm telling you, when those arms thrust down, they'll push weight into the floor over here. It's hard to overcome and get your weight to shift. And if it feels like it's a big struggle, hey, something's interfering because it would be a struggle if you didn't have the club. Okay, in your hand. That was Ivan from New Zealand. Okay, Stephen, hope that helps. Peter, Francolini. I'm in my mid-50s, a score in the low 90s. All of us would like to shoot our age, sort of, except we don't want to be 79 years old necessarily if we're younger than that, but you've got to push those together. I know a guy, teach a guy I have for 20 years, won 21 club championships, played basically zero handicap golf for 40 years, plays a ton. He has shot his age more than 1,500 times, I know it. That's pretty rare. Okay, I don't know why I'm off on that. Okay, how to maintain a good ball distance without Can you touch on how to maintain a good ball distance without rotational motion like the young pros? Love your channel. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. I think when you say ball distance, I think you're talking about the distance the ball travels. Well, hey, listen. I mean, you got to do. I'm not able to move my body like Dustin. I'd kill myself if I tried to move like that. Probably wouldn't even hit the ball. So you've got to do what you can do. Hey, listen, there's no question. The more you can disassociate one segment, we talked about this a minute ago, 4 segments, the more they disassociate. Look at Fred Couples, one of the best. He moves this and nothing moves. That creates a lot of energy. So you don't necessarily need huge hip rotation to hit it, particularly if you're getting a little older and stiffer, but you've got to have a little bit of whip-like action. So picture it this way. If I had a towel and I did that really fast movement, not a lot of movement, the end of the towel would disassociate and snap hard. If I just did this, nothing. So even if you can't move your hips a lot, the key is to move them decisively, separate them from the other movements. They don't have to move far. Once they've moved, they've got to stop. So remember, it's not just how fast you move your hips and your trunk, it's how quickly you stop it. Picture the towel. It's no good cracking it and then just running with the towel. It's got to stop to get the energy. So fast, short movements with a quick deceleration, even if they're not world record hip turn movements, will help you. I hope. I'm confident if you do it. Okay, thanks again though, Peter. I'm glad you like the channel. Brian, from Valdosta, Georgia. I know a man from Valdosta, Georgia. It was a great friend of my dad's, played for Georgia Tech. Whenever I hear that name, Valdosta, I think of this guy. Anyway, the last time you made mention of a new Master Swing series, has that been posted yet? Well, we just talked about that a minute ago. It is in the process of posting right now. You'll get an announcement the next day or so, but pretty confident if you sign out and sign in tomorrow night, it'll be up, the new full swing course. So excited about that. Hopefully you're going to like it, Brian. Thanks for the question. David Kyle, thanks. Appreciate your help. Well, happy to give it, David. I hope it is helpful to you. DCOM 1000, great stuff. Thanks. I'll think about more pressure. Oh yeah, we talked about pressure on the left foot. Try that out. And just another word. I know I always say stuff like this, but it helps. Play around with stuff. You don't get great at stuff by never trying to make a mistake. One of the reasons, don't you say anything, I'm no good at computers. I don't like making mistakes. I don't know how to get out of them. I don't want to sit there for an hour and try to learn anything. I just don't want it to go wrong. Consequence, useless at computers. You've got to play around with things. I know people that have pulled cars apart with their dad, pulled engines apart. They get good at it because they have to figure stuff out. So when you're practicing stuff in your golf, go ahead, overdo it, underdo it, play around with the variable, let it wash in a little bit and have some fun with it. Tony Compton. Ciaran Keedy. I'm sorry. Okay, that was, I've been looking at SC300. This is D-Sol 100.
That's the swing back.
Oh, yeah.
Swing guy is good.
Yeah, it's terrific, if my wife lets me. Hey, who among us doesn't know that? You love it. I mean, that's the way I would think of it. It's about the price of a 3-wood or a driver or a custom putter. Think how much good you get, how much fun you'd have over the next 2 years. So often we buy a club and you know what, after 2 rounds it's like, no thanks, this hasn't helped. This thing would help. So I'd sell it as if I promised not to buy a club, right? Yeah. If you let me buy this bloody swing caddy. Tony Compton, how do you stop the arms from out racing the hips and hindering the hips clearing? Well, hey, I struggle with that. I mean, it's just, a lot of it honestly is awareness, is getting the feel, filming yourself, looking at that, noticing things, practicing it in a slow motion, exaggerated, then hitting one and kind of seeing what you notice, take some speed out, add some. It's awareness, really. Because once you're aware of something, this is some advice given to me by one of my favorite golf coaches years ago. And it basically said, look, if you're not aware, hey, it's fine if someone told you, do you know your club's too steep? Okay, that's great. But if you have no sense of where it is, when you actually hit it with no sense of it's steep, and it shocks you every time someone shows you, whoa, the club's off, you're not going to fix it. It's only when you become aware of something, you say, wow, the club's here, not here, or wherever, my weight's there, not there. I'm starting to notice that. That is the magic potion. Once the light's on in the room, you can clean the room up. I'm telling you, play around in different speeds where the arms are ultra slow, then faster, and mix and match till you start to become aware of what's happening. That advice, not specific to that problem, but that advice is one of the best things you could have, honestly. Most people, me included for a lot of my golf life, I'm a lot better at it now, thankfully. But most of my golf, I didn't have any awareness. I was so busy thinking about what I wanted to do and fretting about the shot. I had 100 things going on in my head. I had no idea where the club was. I'd see it on film, but in real time, no feel. That locks you out of the room, I'm telling you. You've got to develop instinct, and you've got to develop feel and awareness. Okay, that was Tony. Walt Dean, any early extension with a push fade. Oh, I know about that one. Early extension. This was a real issue for me 25 years ago, probably once in a while now, but not so badly now. That means the hips, hey listen, the hips are flexed to a bent address. This is for everyone who doesn't know what this means. So if I just turned and kept them flexed, that would look terrible, right? You've ever seen anyone that's really stiff and old finish like that and think, what is that? They never extended their hips. That's why they look like that. What early extension is the target line. Target step is extending towards the ball target line, not later in the downswing towards the target once you've turned more. So, things for that. There could be reasons, certainly. I mean, if the club's steep, a better athlete is typically going to go this way to try to get it back in position. If the face is really shut or de-lofted, again, trying to add loft causes that. If you feel your plane's good, etc., though, I would work, here's the thing I wish I'd known 30 years ago, relative to this problem. Both ends of the spine. Don't just think of this end here. Don't try to keep that back and get stuck. Move so that you feel like this end goes down and forward, and as it goes forward, it pushes that end back a little bit. Do it a little too much. Do it a little less and play with it that way. Got to stay in balance, though. No good getting in your heels trying to do that or on your toes. So this has to offset that, and you've got to stay moving. It's no good just keeping your angles. You've got to move as you do it. Do it without a ball. Do it in slow motion. Exaggerate again that feeling. Tiger Woods, you watch him. I mean, he's like that. He gets a tremendous increase in bend coming down, which he receives a lot of criticism for. Which Dustin Johnson does that and never receives any criticism for. That baffles me. Hope that's helpful to you. Okay, Brenda Goslin. Although I've been getting a lot of pars, that's great. I'm still not hitting the sweet spot as consistently on my irons as I'd like. What is your best drill to groove that in? Well, it's a good question, Brenda. I mean, I think the first thing I would always note, spray chalk, foot spray is great. In other words, with feedback, am I consistently hitting it, okay, off center, but is it in one area or is it just all over the place? That's a pretty big distinction. So if it's in one area, let's say toe, you'd start to try to figure out, hey, am I pulling away from the shot? Are my arms pulling in or whatnot? Am I so steep I have to pull back? You'd have some possible path of diagnosis. If it's just all over the face with occasional middle shots, that's more of just an inconsistent thing. Then I would be looking, I'm really, guessing a little bit here without seeing the swing. Then I would just be looking for hard to repeat patterns in the swing, balance issues, club moving around, flat, steep. The more movements and difficulties, the more stuff you see happening, the more likely you are to mix and match around the club face. You look at, say, Justin Rose or Adam Scott, like a robot. I mean, the club just goes there, body angles are perfect. I mean, anybody can play with that swing. So trying to get some of the wobbles out of the swing sometimes can heal that up too. Again, if it's inconsistent in terms of bottoming out early thin, that's another thing. So you got to look at some of the things we said earlier, but I hope that helps you a little bit, Brenda. Flemington, Peter Wynn Martin from St. Simon's Island, that's up in Georgia, I believe, trying to post up on left side with my 68-year-old back. I never have back problems. I went on a couple of days holiday with my wife and slept funny, and I had a sore back the whole week. I'm feeling your pain. Did it sleeping, that's a good sign of getting old. I didn't do it playing ice hockey. Trying to post up on the left with my 60-year-old back. Suggestions appreciated. Also, is there a recommended position for the left elbow at address? Okay, a couple of questions. Let's have a look there, Peter. I'm not a big fan of trying to put the elbow somewhere it doesn't want to go. So I would say, for your physiology, whack your hands together so your arm's straight but not rigid. What does your arm look like? Certainly the wrist might be slightly turned, might affect it a fraction, but round numbers, it'll look like that. For some people it's this, for some people it's this. Most people somewhere in the middle. Ben Hogan had that image in his book about the twine around his arms like this. He doesn't actually look like that in real life though. He looks a little bit like that for impact. He looked much more this way at address, much more this way at impact. So nothing contrived regards that. And the rest of the question was, did you just send some more, Gary?
I did.
Okay.
What is the left position of the elbow?
Oh, posting up, okay. So I think we got the elbow. Posting up, what that means is this is your left post. Are you balanced and fairly straight up on that leg? A couple of thoughts. Again, I think an impediment to that's too much arm speed, makes it hard to get to your left side. But here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get that pressure in the lead foot, and from that to spring both up and around like that. You'll see the belt buckle on a drive or something, or powerful swing, a great player. From about here, go 4 or 5 inches up as they go. When you spring, the head's still in. When you spring, you can turn the hips faster. So I would make some little shots, little soft arm swing, and snap up to where you feel your glutes are underneath you, your belt buckle's tall, and just try to do that where the club is more here. Punch it 40 or 50 yards. Once the club gets up and you haven't, it's not going to happen for you after that. So I hope that helps. I think I need to do some jogging. See how fit I am here. Brian, what driver do you suggest to use? Honestly, I would get a driver fitting. These things are critical. It sets every hole up. You want the distance. You want the best match you can get. Go to someone that knows what they're doing, that's an expert club fitter in your area with a top-notch launch monitor, and just have a look, because it isn't like, Mizuno's better than Ping. They all have different characteristics, and all the shafts and adjustable drivers now have multiple characteristics. Someone with a launch monitor that knows what they're doing, well, let's assume you have a reasonable club load. We'll look at it and say, wow, okay, for this guy's speed, he needs a higher launch angle and less spin. So he needs a lighter shaft at the lower kick point. Whack, try that. Still not enough, try this shaft. Well, you know what, the Ping head, they'll mix and match till they get you pretty much where you need to get. It just isn't a brand. So driver sets up every hole. You're going to use it for 3-4 years. They cost about $400 or $500 a good one. Invest the extra $75 in a proper fitting so that you like what you get. Honestly, if you're going to buy a $5,000 suit and they said, okay, for extra $75 you can have it custom fit or just off the rack. Hey, let's get it to fit for sure.
They'll fit you at PGA Superstore for free if you're going to buy it.
Yeah, PGA Superstore here in town, probably in your town and some other places. If you buy the driver, the fitting is free. So good point there. Jeffrey Williams, how do I keep hands ahead at impact? Well, we talked about that a little bit, Jeffrey.
Lag shot.
Yeah, lag shot would help. You know, the club here is the left-handed version. This thing's great. In fact, I should have talked about this earlier.
Here you go, sir.
Hey,
We got the ladies and the juniors.
ladies and the junior models are just out there. This thing's great though, because we've talked a lot about two things. Awareness. This thing's a little heavier. You can feel it much more acutely in space than a lighter, stiffer club, honestly. So it gives you awareness, plane position, things like that. It's soft enough. I mean, you can hit with it. It's not so soft you can't hit. But it almost, well, it doesn't almost, it literally forces lag. It really helps that transition. It's so hard to make that thing move out of sequence. It's just too soft and your mind's trying to get the thing to work. These are great for feel. They really set you up.
For the wrists forward, just want to do the wrists forward. Lag.
Yeah, so, hey, if you can establish some lag early in the downswing, your job is a heck of a lot easier at getting your wrist forward, I'm telling you. So, the other thing I would say, this certainly would be great, because the lag shot tells you, feel-wise, when the club releases. Not only is it low, it springs a lot more than the golf club. Timing the release. I have not generally, this is for everybody, not generally seen as much success when people try to hold angle as I do when they try to move athletically and release robustly, but try to release in the right spot. More there, less there. So I would consider a lag shot strongly. Is there a link we can do for that?
We can send them one.
We'll send the guys out a link for a discount on that or something. It's a great club. It's so much fun. And when you get some lag, release it forcefully, but release it over there. We said to someone earlier, don't be afraid to make some mistakes on this side of the ball. Most people, 99.9% of their mistakes in 50 years of playing golf are on that side of the ball. That's silly. It doesn't need to be that way. So instead of just trying to keep your hands forward, create some lag, snap it, but do it more in front of the ball. I hope that's helpful to you, because I feel strongly about that advice. Okay, Richard Winship, we've got just a few more. Evanston, Illinois. It's really difficult for me to break the habit of lifting up through the ball. My stomach fights my body too often. Any ideas? Thanks. Hey, appreciate it. Glad you like the videos. That's kind of you there. Let me get the question up here again. All right, Richard, lifting up. We've talked about this a little bit with early extension earlier in the thing. There's two ends of the spine. Get a feel in slow motion without the ball, the feeling of actually increasing your lag. And someone earlier, so their pro had told them, concentrate on keeping your body and your chest down, not your head down. Great advice, by the way. But do it in a manner that you're in balance and a manner where you keep moving. It's no good staying down if you stop moving. I like the image, if I had a little paintbrush, there's a bench pretty low and I had to paint a long stripe on it. That's a good image. How would that look? I mean, most people wouldn't say, whoa, you're gonna have to teach me for a month before I can paint that thing. Just do it. So get that feeling. Both ends of the spine, top and bottom, balance, flow, keep in motion. Lots of swings away from the ball to get the feel, I think would be helpful to you. Did we get some more just now?
Yeah, I just gave you some more. You were back on Richard Vincent, Eli's.
Oh, yeah.
What are some tips for putt face controls? The next one.
Eli's golfing logs. What are some tips for putter face control? Putt face control. Well, I think with putter face control, you want passive hands, but I think you really want your palms.
Putt face.
Putt face.
Pace.
Pace control.
Pace.
Oh, that's a good job. Interrupt. Yeah. Substitute an F for a P. Pace. Okay, honestly, get the Scratch Golf Academy app, which is free. Maybe you have it. Go to Putting Tempo Trainer. There's a whole video on how to select the right one for you. These are tour averages. Only when, assuming reasonable technique and contact with the ball, which isn't that difficult putting. Only when you've established a consistent pendulum pace that never varies. In other words, a big stroke is still tick-tock, a small stroke, tick-tock. So that rhythm is always the same, it's locked in. Only once you've mastered that, honestly, are you really going to be able to putt well. If you're one of these people, like most people are, truthfully, they really have no idea about their rhythm. They just kind of look and think, you're going to have to hit that a little harder or softer. Get the Scratch Golf app, go to the Putting Tempo Trainer in the tools, work on that first. it will really, really make a difference. There's some other clues about green readings and distance control things there as well. I think that would really help you establish a rhythm that repeats for you. Yeah, can I do? I guess I can do that without. Oh, here we go. Okay. See. Okay, so tools. Yeah. Tools. Putting tempo trainer. Now, there's a video that pops up when you've used the first time you use it. It will tell you how to make the selection. But let's say medium tour average, slow tour average. These are all tour typical rhythms on the slow end, the medium, and the fast end. Tick, tock, tick, tock. That's backswing, contact, backswing, contact. Whether or no it's a big or a small putt. If you don't want all the volume, put headset in or turn the volume down. Lay it on the green by the ball and the beep will show you what to do. It's a great tool. And not only, honestly, not only, and I've been lucky enough to get to know some of the best putting coaches in the world, had them down to our facility to do guest golf schools. They're great. It's been a blessing for me to get to learn and know these guys. Not only do the pros use that, they use it regularly for maintenance, like tuning a piano. You play 10 shows, I don't know anything about piano, but you might need to get it tuned if you're an expert concert pianist. They put it back in there, start of the week, get back on their track over the course of months. Tremendous consistency gets built. Derek Brooks used to be a famous Tampa Bay Bucks player called Derek Brooks. Can you talk about improving striking at impact? Have a tendency to flip slightly going through the ball? Well, yeah, it's a good question, Derek. There could be a lot of reasons. One thing you've got to remember, at impact, there's a ton of speed happening down there. The club isn't that easy to control, so it might, hey, you could have an overall look as the club out of position, as your body moving. If assuming everything's reasonably in a good spot, I think one of the things people fail to do, well, two things they do that they should do the opposite. They hit down too much and then add loft. Great players hit level and sweep and take loft off. So I would make small swings and I would brush the ground, hit little low, pick off the ground chips and tilt the face forward. It's no more difficult than that. Tilt the face forward and just hit some, see how my hands look? Just hit some low chips, but have the club brushing. I think usually if you can do that and get that wrist working that way, you do this combined with steep, you're going to have a train wreck. So it's got to be shallow combined with D-loft. Sweep, D-loft always beats chop, add loft. Hopefully, like anything, practice on a small scale, you get it sorted out. I hope so, Derek. Jordan, thanks for the tips. Like the channel in Toronto, Canada. Thanks, Jordan. Pleased to bring it to you. I'm glad you like it. It's kind of you. 2 quick questions. Are you from South Africa? Yeah, I do. 57. So that's how old I am. No, I'm not from South Africa. I lived my whole adult life in America, but I'm actually from Britain. My dad was English, mum American. Lived mostly in England, around London, a little bit up in the north of Scotland, but over here in America pretty much all my adult life, so I don't know what I sound like now. But that's my story there. Thanks though, Jordan. Jane Doe, when I get good with a driver, can't I hit my irons and vice versa? We actually touched on that with someone earlier in the show here, Jane. Some of it's just the human condition and the difficulties in the world. Things don't always go right, but typically when someone is a little steeper and hitting more down, they don't need to hit that much down. When they're hitting a little more down, they hit their irons better, but not their drives. And when they start sweeping it, brushing it, they drive it well, but they can't hit the irons. So as we said earlier, hey, you want to always be shallow from the inside. That gives you a brushing hit. But for irons, the ball's more in the middle, weight and handle are more left. For driver, the ball's more forward. Handle's more in line with the club. We're hitting more up on the ball. So same from this angle, adjust from this angle. I think if you do those things, you have some success. I hope so. Gary Bigelow, how do you stop the shanks? Wow. I think you've got to look at two things. What is your primary tendency? I'm not even say that. Many shankers come out in their balance goes forward, the club gets too far away from them, and they're in serious jeopardy of hitting the heel. Some, less common, get the club coming too far from behind them, so by the time they hit the ball, the club's actually swinging away from them and swings out the ball. Which of the two are you? It would be pretty pronounced. I would look on film and see which you are, work on that. But secondly, you just can't let things happen in a rut. When the middle of that club face is, size of a quarter or something, size of my fingernail, you cannot get so engrossed in trying to have a perfect contact you can't shift it. If you hit a couple of shanks and you're practicing, I would set up to the ball and then swing on this side of the ball so you miss it by a foot. Maybe put a second ball there, start on the outside ball, hit the inside ball. It's like, I don't know if this is scientific, when someone has the hiccups, you splash water in their face or pop them on the cheek, it just shocks the thing out of them. Do something significantly different to break the pattern, and it loosens everything up again. I would really encourage that. If you start doing it again, hit some 2-ball drills again. Don't get stuck. Just tighten your mind, anticipating the shank, trying to hit a perfect shot every time. It's just not enough to shift it. Matt, any ideas, MJF? Any ideas for big guys with limited flexibility to improve club head speed? Well, yeah, I think what you've got to feel a nice big pivot and a nice wide short backswing. Because big guys, if they don't pivot enough and they get too much arms, they get too steep and it costs them power. You've got to move these hands, if they start here, away from the ball. You've got to use your pivot. So big pivot, big wrist cock, short arm swing. Coming down again, I think you've got to feel like you can really snap your wrist through the ball, because if you get too much movement in your body through the ball as a big guy, you're probably going to get steep on it again. And just try to create some snap in the club. So nice short wide backswing with a full hinge, good plane from the inside, and really try to crack the whip with those wrists and see if you can create some speed that way. Sometimes you get big guys with tons of flexibility. John Daly, he is ultra flexible. You wouldn't guess it from looking at him, but not sure if that's the case. Hope that's helpful to you. Night Train, 1957. Mike, Tinley Park, Illinois. Mike Tinley, Illinois. I tend to start rotating before I can drop the club in the slot. Is there a drill to help this problem? Well, yeah. We've talked about a few things, but I would do this drill. If I'm setting up a rotating club gets out here, let's say I'm setting up to the corner of the thing, take it back normally, straight back, a little soft shot, almost stop, and just hit one at 45 degrees. That would have gone 30 yards. I've yet to meet the person, if they totally relax and don't worry about contact again, those sucking in here couldn't hit the ball sideways. If they're playing field hockey, they can do that. Do something really different. If you get your arms to do that, you've gotten the early turn out of there, I'll tell you. And I would do that and mix every third or fourth shot, mix something like that in. I think that would be great for you, Mike. William Wallace, what's your opinion on using pop stroke in putting like Brandt Snedeker? I'm not a big fan of it. Now he's great. He would beat the heck out of me. But I think in the long run, on the quicker, smoother greens of today's era, I think a pendulum could be a pretty brisk one, like a Tom Watson, is the best way to go. Hey, with putting though, honestly, trial and error. What works for you is what you should go with. And overall, not a huge fan of it. Brandt's great though. Brian, I have a M6 driver right now. I'm not quite sure what that question is, but.
I just grabbed the call. People just chat and talk.
Okay, could be chatting and talking amongst each other, that's fine. Jordan, are you originally from South Africa? No, actually we had that question a minute ago. Originally Britain, England mostly. Daniel, I continue to pull my shots to the left. Is this primarily due to chicken wing hand or overactive right hand? No, I don't think so. I think the chicken wing is a result, but I think what it is, the club swinging too much, you already know this, the club swinging too much that way through the ball. So you can do the drill we just talked about, take it back, push one this way. But overall, once you're here, okay, a little bump of the weight. De-emphasize turn and emphasize getting the club down. And that should be in a nice, graceful, athletic way, not that. If you can get the club down, then you can turn all you want. You'll be coming from the inside. Okay, a couple more here. Actually, Jonathan Weber, fighting coming over the top, swing divot left from Massachusetts. Honestly, Jonathan, we've had quite a few questions like that, just to Daniel there as well. I won a couple of questions before. I hope those, I suggest those things, you try those. the drastic inside-out swing, getting the club down, etc. I hope that would be helpful to you. Brian, what driver do you suggest? We actually had that question earlier. We talked about a club fit as the key there. Kenneth Cantrell. Hey, Kenneth, when you're at the top of your backswing, what percentage of your weight is on the right foot compared to your left? I haven't been on force plates for quite a while, but by memory and based on what I feel, anecdotally in other words, I would say probably 70 to 75 there, maybe 20 to 25 here, so 25 to 30 here. And again, it isn't shifting. It's just that as the arms swing this way, weight tends to go with them. As you pivot, there tends to be some pressure into that foot there, but it isn't loading the foot. So I would say about 2/3, 1/3. My tendency in my game has been to get too much behind the ball. I've seen a lot of force plate data though. That is not an area where there's huge consistency among elite players. Much more so at impact. 85-15 for a shorter round, something like that. But I've seen it 50-50 at the top, all the way to 80-20 with great players. So more room for personal sort of interpretation there. Ernest Paul, should I extend my arms with my driver? Well, I wouldn't try to do anything different with your driver than you're trying to do with any other swing, truthfully. Now, certainly with a driver, it's the most robust release. It's the longest club. It's the club the best players keep their upper body behind the ball a little more, so the arms tend to get a little longer and out away from them. But I wouldn't be thinking of it as a different swing. So I would just look for good sound fundamentals and kind of go with that there, if you could. I've lost my spot here, sorry. Let's go down here. Derek Brooks, got him, Matt. Brian Snedeker. Daniel, Brian. Okay, Kenneth, when you're, oh yeah, tell you what's right. Okay, yeah, thanks, Ernest. Okay, Mike B. from Columbus, Missouri. What is the proper sequence of rotation and weight transfer? Any drills? Well, hey, we've said already, it's definitely hips, upper trunk, arms, club in that sequence. But not every great player does it the same in terms of Fred Couples is like this with his hips there. Who's the young guy lost his polo contract? He's a really good player. Justin Thomas is much more in the box and rotary. It's just in athletic intuition. It's just, there isn't an exact right way. What counts is that you create energy and you get the club on a good plane. So if you're, Justin Thomas is super flexible and sort of lanky. He gets his arms up, but he kind of turns and springs and his arms come down. I think that'd be pretty hard for most people like that. Fred Couples has a big upright swing, so he needs to drop it in, and he uses his hip slide to create a lot of bend this way. So, hey, something in between there probably, but the key is use this to help you get the club on plane. If you're getting it on plane, you're probably close to what you should be. And again, not every great player does it the same by any means there. Okay. I love to play a punch shot. This is Howard Bly, where I use the half a backswing and use a very strong core with no hand rotation. What's your opinion? I like that shot. Hey, listen, anytime you're able to use your core and hands are pretty stable through impact, you're going to have some control. The question is, can you hit it far enough doing that? I mean, Paul Azinger, Justin, what's his name, Zach Johnson, they can hit the ball pretty darn far, and they don't have a whole lot of hand release, a lot of hip movement like that, a lot of core movement. So sure, I like those shots. I'm going to ask you another one. Who's the English player with the long hair and the beard? Come close in a couple of majors. Hasn't played so well last year. Yeah. You know the guy? Yeah, kind of a beard. Oh, I can see his swing. He gets a lot of his shots are very punchy with their finish like that. He doesn't have a lot of big full finishes, so I'm fine with it. I think it's great. I'm determined to lose my place. Doing a good job of it too. Okay, got it. Jordan N. Are you English? Yeah, we talked about that actually just a few questions ago. Originally, I'm half English, half American. My mother was American, so I had dual citizenship. Tommy Fleetwood. There it is, Tommy Fleetwood. Watch him. Really good player. A lot of punch shots, a lot of hold-off looking finishes, very little club to back sort of look. Walt Dean. I'm hitting a push fade. I think I'm tilting the club face over an impact. How do I keep the face up? Well, yeah, I mean, if you're probably right. I mean, if you're pushing it, you're probably swinging from the inside and not squaring the face. So I think you'd look at staying over the ball more. As you stay over it, if you keep moving, the club will come more onto the target line, less this way. I mean, I check that grip, make sure it's down in the fingers enough, wrapped over enough, and hey, you got to overdo it. Someone was asking, maybe I didn't get the question, club face, no, it's putter length control. Club face, you got to play with it like any variable. Do a few small shots and overdo the turning. Remember for everyone, squaring the club isn't flashing the club past your hands, it's turning the face. Practice it in front of you and work on that till you get some little low snipey hooks on a half sort of 8-iron scale, and then back off it and put some in. So I'd stay over it a little bit more to get rid of the push swing, work that club face, overdo it, maybe check the grip till you're doing some of the opposite, then work your way back to the middle.
This is the last
Okay, last few questions. Avid golfer, lead arm abduction. How much should the lead arm move across the chest during the backswing from the address position? What are your thoughts on the lead arm? Okay, yeah, that's a clarification. I appreciate that. Okay, well, again, this is one, if you look at Fred Couples or some other players, they're like this. If you look at Matt Kuchar, he's like that. So there isn't a right amount, but I'm going to go with my old mentor, David Ledbetter here, his A-swing. I favor, as a preference, that the lead arm, if the connection stays reasonably similar, it's not at right angles to my body, it's here. This is the theory of the A-swing, is the wrists cock up, but the arm connection is similar, so the arms are across and the wrists are more up. It's actually got a lot of merits, I'm telling you, but I'm a little bit more of a fan of that. I don't think it's just stuck to you. I think the arm slides and swings, and it might even slide up the chest a bit, but generally, I favor more across you. I would say if you have a perfect camera angle, your hands would be about in line, maybe sternum to right pec. If I've got my camera angle right for you there, at the arm's parallel point, and probably lead arm blocking the view of the right shoulder, the trail shoulder, top of the backswing. That would be what I like to see. Again, not every great player does that, so it's a preference, let's say. Can't quite read that name. Doing live streams for free. Best golf channel on YouTube. Hey, that's kind of you. I appreciate that. Very kind of you. I'm pleased people like it, and we're happy to try to help. Doug Sana, how can I stop swaying toward the target in the downswing? Well, this is what I would look at, Doug. Is your head, let's assume the backswing, is your upper body moving or is your lower body? Your lower body should be moving towards the target somewhat, enough to get about the hip over the ankle. So if I drew an ankle line up, there'd be some of my pants that side of it. If you can do that with your head about in the same spot, that's the perfect amount. I would not consider that swaying. I think that's just what you're looking for. Okay. Chapchai Somrisi. I'm 66 years old and a great fan of the scratch golf. I appreciate that. Your teachings are great. Thanks. Keep going. That's kind of you. You do a great job. I appreciate that. You know, honestly, this is one of these things. I've just been very blessed, very lucky, because I'm an avid golfer. I love the game. I've worked at this thing, spent my life at it, really. I got a connection with someone, Phil Ritson. He's gone now, really great coach 40 years ago, and a friend of his, or a sort of understudy of his, is David Ledbetter. So I got to know David. This is long before David was ever on the map in terms of being famous, and stayed in touch with David. Actually wound up taking lessons from David when this other guy moved out of the Orlando, Central Florida area. And then David, subsequently, when he did get really well known and was coaching Fowler Price, gave me a job owning one academy. I was like one of his little, underlings, but I was always underfoot and around. Just a great environment. His staff, but the connections through David over the years, and we stay in touch, I'm thankful to say, pleased to say, have given me so many other connections to top people in the golf teaching world, and those connections have given me still more. So I've just been super lucky to get so much good input, and I have a full-time job teaching golf, so I get to try stuff out every day. And honestly, over the course of several decades, with that much good input, you see where at least as an individual, what seems to work with people, what resonates, what drills seem to help these things. And over the course of years and years, you said, distill it out. Well, at this point, if I'd done videos 25 years ago, you'd have hated them. But now, thankfully, they've been vetted out, so to speak, so I'm pleased you're liking them, and I'm, pleased they're helping some people. It's kind of you to say that. Pete Burgess, would you give me a private lesson? Sure, yeah. Go to Adam B Golf, ADAMBGOLF.com, and we'll get together. Arthur Bundane. If you're not flexible enough to turn behind the ball, what would be the acceptable enough to work on? Well, hey, listen, you can work on your fitness. Couple of things. Again, we're not trying to get miles behind the ball, but we're certainly trying to get mostly our back to the target. You could get someone that knows that they're talking about the fitness area, do a little training with them might help. I would definitely recommend that for injury-free, sustaining playing longevity and swinging better. And the other thing is, hey, if you let your knee and hip be a little freer, I don't mean just shoot them back there, but if you let them loosen up a bit, let some movement happen here, you don't need to be as flexible to complete your backswing. I think you might consider that. So hopefully of that menu, you can find some help there, Arthur. Brenda, almost done here. I'm just implemented your latest putting instruction from the Golf Fanatics. It was so helpful. Oh, great. I'm pleased to hear it, Brenda. That's nice of you to chime in and let me know that. Philip Rosenthal, you may have already answered this. How do you advance your ball 150 yards away or greater when it's in thick rough? Actually didn't. You got to get, I mean, this is not easy. You got to hit kind of sharply down, because if you come in too level, you're going to get too much grass between the club and the ball. This requires some loft though. When you start whacking down that, you're effectively losing loft. Not only do you need some loft, you're going to get the ball up out of the grass. It's no good coming out low because it gets stuck in the grass. So you've got to get some loft, whatever you can get, 8, 9 on something, depending on how thick it is. Got to get up out of the grass. You've got to smash down with a short finish and get some contact and get it up out of the grass. And unless you're super strong, some of the distance you're going to get is going to be bounce and roll. It's not going to stop like a normal shot, so it's a little less predictable. That's why it's punitive. Quick anecdote as we start to wrap up here. An old friend of mine, golf pro friend, his dad was the 35-year pro at Winged Foot. So in the 2006 US Open that Mickelson lost in that horrible double bogey at the end, which I hated to see that. It was pretty pulling for him there. He called my friend's dad, the pro, who was a tour player in his day, and said, look, nobody's played this course more than you. It's like 2 weeks before the Open. I want to come up and play practice round with just you and spend the day with you. Would you do that with me? It's like, sure, come on up. So they set the day up. By this time, Tom Neaporti, the former pro there, is probably 70. But you know what he said at the end of it? Because I asked Joe, I said, how was your dad's stay with Phil? He said, great. He said, Phil was great. He really enjoyed his company. He said that when they build up to an Open, they get the rough super long because they can always cut it. They can't grow it at the last minute. He said the most impressive thing, other than how nice a guy was how far he could carry the ball out of rough like that. He said it was unbelievable, like 190 out of stuff like this. He said it was pretty impressive. So, anecdote there for you. Brian, Rocco, there's Todd. Thanks for your helpful response. Sure, Todd. And Jamie, thanks. Well, I'm glad I could help. Well, folks, we've appreciated you joining in. If you're coming in on recording, hope you can join us live next time. We're at the Lagshot headquarters down here. I've been nice enough to be invited down to use the monitor and the sensor. We talked about Lagshot earlier. This club is a lot of fun. Coming out with the junior clubs, lefty clubs, ladies versions.
Ladies, junior, and XL. We already have that.
And XL, okay, yeah, they're all left. Ladies, junior, and XL along with the men's. This is a fun club I think you'd enjoy. It comes with a 10-part video series from yours truly, and that comes with the product. All sorts of drills and fun ways to use it. Anyway, shout out to Lagshot for having me down here. Best of luck to you guys. Appreciate you guys and gals and being part of this tonight, being part of Scratch Golf.